Good morning, students. Today we're talking about 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. We're going to look at 1st Thessalonians and the stuff that Paul says about himself. We're going to look at 2nd Thessalonians and the stuff that Paul says about himself. And we're also going to look at how these two books both cover eschatology as well. Eschatology is just the same thing as end times. Okay? Eschaton is the end, eschatology is the study of the end. So, and then we're going to close with one other thing from 2nd Thessalonians. Let's get into it. 1st Thessalonians, Paul is going to talk about himself as a father, and this indicates that he has authority, but also love for the church in Thessalonica. He's also going to say that he taught them and encouraged them as one nursing their infants or nursing their young. So he's also going to compare himself to a mother. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that anything of the genders has to do with this. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Okay. I'm simply showing you that he's comparing himself to a father and a mother as one who is in authority over his church and one who cares about his church. Okay, he's contrasting these two different authoritative figures to describe the different roles that he has in authority over the church. In 2nd Thessalonians, Paul talks about himself as uh, as having given the Thessalonians these traditions that they need to keep passing on. So again, he's acting as an authoritative figure over the Thessalonian church. And this is really what I want us to see in Paul. But he's going to say, keep the traditions that I passed on to you. And these traditions, I'm not going to talk about what I think they are. It's not super clear in the text, but it's basically traditions that Paul gave to the church to keep doing. Okay, and so we already see that Paul's commands are going to be very important. And so the main thing that we're going to get here from both First and First and Second Thessalonians is that Paul is going to be their authority. Okay, so if we were to summarize how Paul describes his relationship to the Thessalonians, it's that he has a position of authority. And we've talked about this before. This was the same way that he approached the Corinthians. Now, he definitely had to correct a lot more in the Corinthian church, but he still indicated that he was their authority. This is something that we see is heavily talked about in Paul's letters. Let's get to eschatology in both 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. In Thessalonica, the city that this letter was written to, the political and the social atmosphere surrounding the church was not good. They were being persecuted, and so the church was struggling with a few different things. They were struggling with wondering about Christ coming back, because that would mean that was the end of their persecution, and they wanted Christ to come back. They actually wanted their persecutors to be judged. And then they also were kind of worried about what would happen to those who had already fallen asleep, and that means those who were dead. And so Paul addresses some of these issues. In 1 Thessalonians, he talks about how the dead will rise. Okay, this is something that he says. Talking about the resurrection that believers will receive when Christ returns. Okay? And he's doing this to encourage them because he's saying that if you've died, that doesn't mean that you're left out. In fact, you're going to be the first one to go. That's what he says. You're going to be the first one to rise and be with Christ. And then he says that others who are awake or alive are going to be caught up with Christ. So the dead will rise. This is a super encouraging thing in 1 Corinthians. And then this hope that I want you to watch a Bible Project video on the word hope, on biblical hope, is really often what is referred to as their hope. So whenever you see hope in the Bible, in the New Testament, they're going to be thinking about their hope, that they will one day rise. Now, uh, this is always associated and confirmed by Christ's resurrection. Okay? So their hope is confirmed by Christ's resurrection. And this is why we say Christ is our hope. Okay? Because he's not only the means by which we come to rise from the dead, he is the example or the first person to demonstrate what our hope is. Okay? Our hope is in him to basically accomplish this. Okay, let's move on to 2 Thessalonians. Well, 2 Thessalonians is going to talk about eschatology in a little bit more of a judgment sense. And so they're going to talk about the day of the Lord. And this day of the Lord is going to be referenced in Thessalonians. And it's an Old Testament phrase that talks about God coming in and basically judging sinners. And now the judge on the day of the Lord is Christ himself. And so we can see that it's a day where Christ, God, returns to judge those, judge the wicked. But he also encourages them and he says, look, you're going to be a part of this, even though you're experiencing affliction now. He's also going to talk about the man of lawlessness in this. And a lot of people will talk about, okay, who is this man of lawlessness? So specifically who this man is, it's not important. And actually, that's not what the text encourages us to do. It's not to guess at who is the man of lawlessness, but to understand basically what this man of lawlessness will do and how he will be defeated. What he'll do, essentially, he'll oppose God and he'll act as God. Okay? This is the epitome of sin or the epitome of lawlessness, to reject God and place yourself as God. The man of lawlessness will be defeated by Christ. Okay? That is Paul's basically closing remarks on the man of lawlessness, and then the topic is basically done being discussed. This is the stuff that he covers in eschatology in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Now, in 2nd Thessalonians, Paul is going to talk about one other thing that I want to mention. He's going to talk about this basically command, don't be idle. And maybe your parents have said this to you before. It says in 2 Thessalonians, don't be idle. You need to, go do chores. That's not exactly what it's talking about. So it's not saying don't be lazy, okay? It's really talking about actually a man in the church's response toward working in the church, working for the church's well-being, and then also watching out for those who are poor. This man is not doing these things, and he's probably actually usurping authority as well. So this is a lot. It's a lot bigger. This word, "do not be idle," is a lot bigger than just "do not be lazy." Okay, it has to do with kind of, we could describe it as this a stubbornness to not participate in the church, in the church's work. That's the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video about 2 Thessalonians. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm always available during office hours. All right, have a good day.